Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 104, my returning guest is Dave Petrella. Dave is an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, Oak Island theorist, and is the host of his own unique podcast on his YouTube channel, as well as co-host of the Aliens and Astrology podcast, which is found on all of the @Karen Holton TV channels and Dave's YouTube channel. Dave has traveled to all 50 states and most of Canada doing research, and he has studied world religion extensively, along with Eastern medicine, metaphysics, and topics related to extraterrestrial intelligence. Dave is available for teaching, birth charts, relationship matching, spiritual guidance, and many other topics. He is available on Facebook, Instagram, and by email, and the links will be posted in the description below. In this episode, I'm really excited about the topic. Dave is going to share with us his vast knowledge about the ancient American homeland. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show, Dave. How you doing?
Hey, Karen, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Now we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to feature one of my beautiful orgone generators today for people who would like to support my work and have the best quality orgone generators that money can buy. I just want to show this one off today. Oh, they're available on my website. Sorry, I didn't say that. So this is green peridot. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got a clear quartz point. That's a AAA clear quartz point, so it's very, very high quality. There's copper in there, and then there's the beautiful seed of life, which actually is the same as on my pendant, which is also available on my website. So I just wanted to show these off a little bit at the beginning of the show for those of you who would like to support my work and or are looking for the perfect gift, and or just want to arm yourselves a little bit more from all the electromagnetic smog that's surrounding all of us all the time. So now let's get back to our topic. I'm really, really excited, Dave. I have been doing research along similar lines as you. I've come up with very much the same conclusions, and there is absolutely compelling evidence that the cradle of civilization is indeed in North America. And I don't want to give too much away because I want you to share, with the viewers, your point of view, your perspective, and the research you've done. So yeah, welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. Yeah, so the topic today, it's really intriguing. It's incredibly interesting. It keeps going and going and going. I mean, you feel like you've covered most of it, and then it's like, nope, here's another thread of information we got to go kind of look at. But just to kind of kick it off, I mean, in school, specifically, like I would say anywhere from, well, really from the beginning of education all the way through high school, it's all about Columbus. It's all about 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he did not even land in what's today the United States. He landed in the Caribbean. And there's some question about whether he was actually intending to land in the Caribbean, and some of that is going to be coming up in the presentation I'm going to do here, because of what he thought, what I think he thought he was looking for, which possibly was the Fountain of Youth. Ponce de Leon was over there, I believe, in the 1500s looking for the same thing. And there's going to be a lot on Florida in this video, the state of Florida in the United States. because that's kind of that general area. So, and it gets even stranger because in terms of who he had on board with him and what their qualifications were, and it seemed like maybe it was not what we think it was. Maybe it wasn't just that you left port in Europe and you just kind of wandered over here and you found whatever land was here. Maybe that's not what it was, guys. Maybe it was actually he was looking for something specific, and he had navigators and he knew what he was doing. So in any case, I would say for me, again, it's this whole 1492 thing. I want to say probably, well, I was probably in college. I started to hear little bits of information about how, maybe it wasn't Columbus who was first. And I didn't really know a lot about that, but people had brought up Vikings and the Celts and Phoenicians and all of these, ancient Hebrew people, all these different groups of people. And I said, okay, what I get, that's what some people think, but I didn't look into it until, of course, I got involved with the Curse of Oak Island show in 2007. Well, 2017 is when I went there to film, but 2016, actually probably even 2015, when I started to really watch it very closely. And there appeared to be some actually decent evidence for earlier contact in 1492. And then what I ended up doing was I took the research or the information from the show that I learned, and I went and I did my own independent research, as I always do. And I started to see that there were actually compelling pieces of information that might suggest that maybe it was not 1492. And by the way, if you ask the natives in, I would say in probably all of the Americas, I've only really been across most of North America. And actually I walked into Mexico once, but I didn't have a chance to really do much there. But the point is that, if you say the New World, they basically shake their head and they say, what are you talking about? This is not maybe it's a new world for you, but we've been here for thousands, if not tens of thousands or more years. And a lot of them even say that, not even necessarily like the Bering Land Bridge theory, which is that they crossed from Russia to North America when the water levels were much lower. Some of them say that actually that's always been their homeland, and their ancestors are there. We come from here. And then that opens up a whole other can of information in terms of what does that even mean? How can that be possible? Then you have to you don't have to get into metaphysics, but you probably should at least start talking about some of the underground stories of how a lot of the natives say that they emerged from a world beneath the ground. And that actually a lot of them actually even claim that they were taken underground when there was a cataclysm. And then when it was safe and clear again, they're actually brought back out. There's all these different topics, lines of thinking that you can kind of follow with that. But in any case, so I started doing a lot of research on my own, and I already mentioned a lot of the groups that I was looking into in terms of people before Columbus, and just kind of like questioning that, seeing what's going on. One of the things that came up kind of the beginning of Oak Island was the Mi'kmaq people. Of course, they're a group in Canada and parts of Maine, a native group. And they live in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, in PEI, Prince Edward Island, I believe, mostly. But the thing about them is that it's right in your face, Karen. And I know you know this, and a lot of these things you've seen as well, and we'll go over quite a bit of them. But their battle flag their flag it comes from a Templar symbol. The Knights Templar, which was way before Columbus. So, and if you can see it, just do a Google search, type in like Templar battle flag, and then the Mi'kmaq, it's M-I-C, M-A-C, it's Micmac or Mi'kmaq. And you'll see that they're inverse images of each other. Not only that, but I believe it also has a star and a crescent on it, which we're going to be getting into in a minute, in terms of why is that there? I know we observe the skies all the time, and of course native tribes, there wasn't television, and some of them probably still don't even have it, don't even care for it, and I don't blame them at all. But you look up, you observe the stars, but maybe there's something else to that symbol. And so I started to get these pieces of information, and I don't forget a lot of things, Karen, as you probably know. If I can't explain it fully, I just need about 5 minutes to refresh, and then I can go into it again, because I just so much information constantly coming into my field of vision. So anyway, that was one of the first things. It was Oak Island. It was the Curse of Oak Island show that I was involved with. And I said, no, I don't believe this narrative anymore. And it was a slow process. I remember some of the other shows were about the Norse coming over here, and things like the Kensington Runestone that was supposedly found in Minnesota that talks about a Norse voyage. and which of course would have been a really long time ago, far before Columbus. And I don't just look at it and I say, okay, that's probably what it is. It takes like sometimes 6 months or even a year or two before I feel willing to step out and talk about it. I'll put it that way. I don't talk about anything until I have enough information and I feel pretty good about it. And I also, it's important that I know I have the ability to be able to pivot. If someone brings up a topic or piece of information, I should have enough of my own information that I should have an adequate response to whatever they're going to say. So if I don't feel like I'm ready to go, I won't even engage in the topic. So start off with Oak Island for me in terms of questioning this narrative about when people came over here, where people were from, what they were doing, and all this stuff. And then the other part was, there's two other parts to this before I kind of open up the presentation here. The second part was that in 2008, and this was my first road trip, and as Karen mentioned, I've been to all 50 states in the United States and also most of Canada, doing research and learning and working and all kinds of things. And so what I learned was when I was in the Southwest in the United States, it was pretty close to the Four Corners region, and which is where Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, and also Utah kind of intersect and form a cross. It's called the Four Corners of the United States. I'm in this area, and I start hearing, it sounded like wind, kind of like wind. And again, this is 2008, so you guys can kind of get an idea for when this happened in terms of where we're at now and where I'm at now. But it wasn't wind. It was a voice, and it was actually language. I don't know if I shared this with you, Karen. I may have. Probably
not sure.
Okay, well, this goes with it kind of goes right alongside with the shiprock story that I shared with you and Aurora on the show that we did together. And it happened at the same time. And it was very clearly a language. It was words that were stringed together. Just to get that out of the way, completely sober. I had nothing. I was not in any altered state of consciousness. I had not been meditating, nothing at all. It was completely like from a 0 point that I'm coming at this. And I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know the legends of the area. I didn't know any of this stuff at all. So it's a very good control going in terms of an experiment going into this situation. And it actually sounded to me like Arabic. Now, this is back in 2008, and I kept this piece of information. I've kept it all those years because I said, I don't know what that was. I have no idea what that was. The only thing that I can say is that some of the terrain looks similar to the Middle East, and that's the only thing I could think of. I'm like, I don't know what else this means, but I don't think that Arabic people were over here or Muslim people were over here. I have no idea what this means. But I don't throw things away unless it's, completely irrelevant information, which it actually, most of the time, it isn't. You can always learn something. So I had that stored back in my head. So I've got Oak Island. I've got the Arabic in the wind. And it was creepy too, Karen. It was like a whisper. It was really strange, really, really weird. And I'm not even very familiar with Arabic, but that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like Middle East. There's definitely somewhere on the other side of the world over there. So that was number 2. Number 3 was fairly recently, actually. Well, 2011. 2011 into 2012, I read the Book of Mormon. As you guys probably know, I did a lot of research on that topic. Actually, this past summer, where I was traveling across the United States, and I went to pretty much all of the important church history sites and a lot of the secondary church history sites as well. And the story in the Book of Mormon is essentially that there were several groups of ancient Semitic people, and they came over to what would later become the United States. Well, not just the United States, but to the Americas, actually. Sometimes when they talk about it, they actually include Central America and even sometimes South America as well. And so that the claim is that these people, very ancient people, came over here. I believe the first group of people was definitely BC. I thought it was maybe around 1000 BC or 1200 BC, somewhere in there, that they came over here and they were fleeing from the iniquities of the people in ancient Mesopotamia. And this actually centers around the Tower of Babel. And this is what the Book of Mormon's about, guys. If people don't know about it, you can actually read it if you want to, and you're open-minded, try to read it like a history book, and then just use critical thinking about it and base it off of what you're feeling as you move along. But of course, I'm open to all information. So I read the book, and it talks about these groups of people being over in the Americas, and it also talks about that the Mormon Church, LDS, believes that Jesus actually came over here after he did some of his mission in the Middle East. And after the resurrection, he actually came over here to teach the other sheep, which were the lost tribes of Israel that came over here. So, and it's a very, very long story. I mean, it's very detailed. If someone made it up, which I don't believe it's made up at all, but I'll let people decide for themselves if you want to read the Book of Mormon. But it's very involved, and there's lots of connecting pieces of information, and it's pretty hard to refute if you're really thinking about it. And especially after if you want to keep going with that, go to the sites, go to these places that there were supposed to have been miracles, that places where Joseph Smith had appearances of the Father and the Son, a Sacred Grove in Palmyra, New York, his boyhood home. He had another vision at the John Johnson home in Ohio, Hiram, Ohio. There's all these things. So, what I do, of course, I'm very open to the supernatural world, as you are as well, Karen. And I went there and I wanted to see what I felt. Either I feel it or I don't. And I've been wrong plenty of times. I go to places. Sometimes people have told me things about it, and I go in with, a blank slate, and I just see what I feel about it. And so these particular sites, a lot of them are very supernaturally charged. They're very powerful. So as far as I'm concerned, something did happen there. And the question is what, and what does it mean? And again, I encourage everyone to go and see for yourself. But when you go in, and when you go into any site, you want to make sure you're being respectful. All the spiritual world, I believe, deserves respect. I think you would agree with me on that, Karen, including the extraterrestrial races, of which some of us I'm sure are a part of as well, some of us humans. And so be open, go in and see what you think. So all of these lines of thinking have kind of merged together for me. And I thought that they were separate at one point. And, but I always kept in the back of my head. And I said, well, one day I'm going to use this. I don't know how, but let's see what happens. So I have a huge amount of information. It obviously continues to build every day. And then it was probably a month ago, Karen. I never know when I'm going to get information coming in. I don't ever know the source of information, which is why I try to fully listen to everyone's story, especially if I don't know the person and I don't have a feeling for their credibility, what I believe is their credibility. I need to hear them through. And it might be, and I'm sure you've kind of this a lot too, Karen, is that it might be one phrase that the person says that you realize, if I hadn't sat in for 2 hours and listened to that, I would have missed this absolutely stellar, vital gold piece of information that I have never seen or heard anywhere else. And it happens to me all of the time. I listened to a 4.5-hour podcast yesterday, and there were like 2 pieces of information I had never heard before. And guess what? It has changed my life. It has changed my life. It could have not been in there, but it was this time. And I wanted to turn it off and I wanted to go to sleep, but I said, no, I need to hear this. I knew I had to hear the person out. Okay, so it was probably about a month ago, maybe up to 2 months ago. Certainly not more than that. And I was on YouTube. I actually have no idea how I found it. I actually really don't remember. I did share it with Karen immediately after I found it, but I found a documentary. Actually, before that, it was a YouTube video. It just popped up on my feed somewhere. Maybe it was on Facebook. I have no idea. I wish I could remember, but there's just so much that comes in. I just can't remember all the places I find things. But I know where to find it, and I'm going to tell you guys where it is and what it is so you can watch it yourself. So what it was an interview. It was a podcast, and it was about the ancient Americas being the ancient homeland of the world, essentially. And I had been familiar with that. Actually, Joseph Smith, who was the founder of the Mormon Church, says that the Garden of Eden was actually located in Jackson County, Missouri, which is where the town of Independence, Missouri is, which is right outside Kansas City, just to the east. And the thing about it is that it sounds completely out in left field at the beginning. And I actually came across that piece of information probably about 3 years ago or more. And I said, this is like, I don't even know what to do with this. What am I supposed to do with this? It sounds ridiculous. I had no context for it. However, I'd also never visited that site. So again, if people don't get anything else out of what I say ever, you want to try to get the firsthand experience, no matter what the place is, as long as it's, safe and reasonable to do so. because there's energy in the land, there's energy in the people there, there's stories, there's narratives that you can feel and you can kind of pick up on as you're moving into the research. So I didn't know what to do with it at the time. But I was aware that the story of the Garden of Eden, according to Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon religion, was in the Americas, and not only the Americas, but it was in the state of Missouri, which is a Midwestern state in the United States. So I had this piece of information that I was thinking about, and again, I didn't know what to do with it. But then as I did research, I was able to put more and more together in terms of what I thought that meant. And again, on the ground research, I'm walking through the sites, I'm asking people questions, I'm having long conversations, I'm sitting in meditation, a quiet space, asking with a pure heart. That's always key to higher levels of spirituality and to understanding, especially to understanding ancient timelines. Sitting there asking, and I always phrase it this way, usually not verbal, like orally spoken, but it's a thought that comes through my head. And I ask the universe if it's willing to provide me with this information, if it believes that I am trustworthy enough and I'm going to be honest and I'm going to do the right things with it. That's what I say. I don't say, give me the information. I say, I'm open to whatever you'd like to share with me, because I don't know, Karen, and I don't even know if it's the right time sometimes, or if I'm the one who's supposed to bring it to people. You never know. But what I do know is that, since in 2008, I've been very, very focused on the fact that I want to do what's best for the universe collectively, and what's also, of course, what's best for me and for the people I care about. Sometimes that is having the humility to say, I don't really know, but I'm going to be open to it, and I want to do my part, whatever that is. Sometimes, for instance, I wanted to dig up what I thought was the treasure on Oak Island in 2017. Well, that wasn't in the plan for the universe, for the solar system. And it wasn't until 2 years after that I realized why, in terms of it's a timeline thing. It has to be at the right time. And now I understand it and I'm okay with it. So now I can sit back and watch. I did get a lot of information that I needed from that experience. So anyway, the video I found was from a YouTube podcaster. He calls himself Dr. Narco Longo, Longo, and his YouTube channel is called Old World Florida. And, first of all, go check it out. Please subscribe to it and watch the documentary. It's called, on his channel, it's called The True Fertile Crescent. And again, the Fertile Crescent, most people say, oh, Mesopotamia, this is where kind of civilization really took off. I just was reading a book the other night and talking about how this was a Reader's Digest book actually from 1980, I believe. And in terms of the quality of information, much better than a book written in 2020. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like riveting information, things I've never heard before, pictures I've never seen before. I saw some pictures of Easter Island. There were kids playing on one of the Moai statues, one of the ones that they never erected. Actually, the largest one, still in the stone quarry. And there's like kids playing on it, 3 kids. I didn't even know that a picture existed. It's like, and that's what I ask for. That's what I ask from, I'm not getting it, of course, I'm doing it my own way now, but for television shows and entertainment, it's like, show us things that we're going to find interesting. Don't repeat things over and over. Don't be condescending. Don't try to change the narrative. Just give us the information and give us things that are going to pique our interest, and that are riveting to look at. So in any case, I watched this documentary, and I had found the channel probably like a couple weeks before this documentary came out. So I was already aware of a lot of the information presented. But then once you watch the documentary, it's about an hour and 20 minutes. It's well worth all of your time. Please sit down and watch it, guys. I actually put it onto my educational videos tab under my YouTube channel because it is that important, and I want it to be up there for forever, as long as the video is in existence. And it's very rare that I do that because there's a lot of information, but this is such a narrative changing presentation, and it's vital information, especially as we move into the new world. There's things that we really need to know, in my opinion. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and again, I give full credit, the stuff that I talked about before, that's all my own research, of course, the things that the lines of thinking that I followed. Some of the things in the presentation I'm about to, I'm going to kind of present it as a summary, a recap of the things that I found the most important in the video. And then I'll definitely would like to hear Karen's feedback because she's also watched it and she loved it just as much as I did. and we'll try to piece together some of this information and see what we can come out with. So I'm just going to go through some notes I have from the presentation, and it's probably going to take me about 15, 20 minutes. I just want to get through these what I think are the most important things, and then I'll open it up, Karen, to you, and you can share with me what you found the most interesting and important. But either way, watch the video, guys. Go over to the Old World Florida YouTube channel. Give Dr. Narco Longo some support. He's not a real doctor. That's the name he goes by, which I'm totally fine with. We can call ourselves whatever we want. It's our business. So you do what is good for you. That's what I say to people. But just so you know, not a medical doctor, doesn't have a doctorate degree, but that's a name he goes by. Give him some support, guys, because he's really onto something. I don't know where some of the information is coming from, to be honest. I don't know if some of it's being channeled. I tried to be as objective as possible, especially going into a scientific array of information. I don't know if he's being some kind of group is sharing this information with him because they think it's the right time for people to hear it. I don't know if it's an alien race. I don't know if it's their meditation. I don't know what it is, and I actually don't really care, because what I care about is that people watch this, and then you guys do what you want with it, and you feel around it, and you see what makes sense to you. But give him the support, guys, because he deserves it. Go over there and check out. You might not love his style. That's not the point. Some people like his style, but go over and listen to the information. The information is what I'm talking about. That's the most important thing. Okay, so here's the summary. So we've got the cradle of civilization. So Mesopotamia is also often called the cradle of civilization. And that term cradle, this is something I just essentially channeled yesterday, Karen, because a cradle to me is something that usually holds an infant or a young human, and it's something that is, I also think about in a mother's arms. You kind of make like this U shape in your arms, and you hold the infant in there, and you kind of swing it back and forth, not swing, but you rock it back and forth to lull it to sleep and to pacify it. So the cradle, okay, so I'm thinking about that word cradle, and I'm thinking about a shape, because when I think of words in etymology, I try to put everything together. I'm thinking about that shape, and that shape is essentially, and again, this is according to the Old World Florida documentary, the Gulf of Mexico is kind of looks like a cradle. I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, that does actually kind of look like a cradle, but it also looks like a crescent. And not only does it look like a crescent, it really looks like a crescent. It really does. And you see the protuberances on either side of the crescent moon coming out. One of them is, of course, Florida, the peninsula of Florida. And then it goes all the way around the Gulf Coast, and then it comes out the Yucatan Peninsula, and that would be the other side of the crescent. So I'm looking at this, and I had to like pause the video. I'm like, whoa, because I really had to start thinking about this. And again, it is way out there for people who have never gotten this topic before. But take your time, and it's well worth seeing. So the claim is that what this video is saying is that the original Fertile Crescent was actually the Gulf of Mexico, and not Mesopotamia. And some of the claims, well, the shape, you can see that yourself. It's actually amazing how much that does look like a crescent moon. But the other part is that, again, according to the video, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if we can even know if this is true. We don't know what happened 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Like, you can say you did, you can read tablets. Well, maybe the tablet was a fabrication. Maybe people were trying to entertain people. I don't know, but we need to look at it critically. So the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, it is kind of like a crescent. It goes from the Persian Gulf up the Tigris and Euphrates. It comes over down essentially like kind of the Jordan River area over by Israel and by the Mediterranean Sea. And then it comes out the Suez Canal area into the Red Sea. That's kind of the Fertile Crescent as we know it. Well, supposedly, and I know this is, even I believe the Sumerians talk about it, that there was a lot of irrigation required in the area, and because it's very dry and it's very hot, so there's a very thin sliver of land that's able to be farmed, and it's only by diverting water and stuff like that. So you really have to struggle. You really have to force the land to provide for you. It's not like this tropical paradise. It's very dry, and there's not a huge amounts of water except for right alongside the rivers right there through that valley. But that's something to think about. It's okay, I guess it's fertile if you are able to divert the water and to farm properly, but it's not what we think about in terms of, if you think about the Garden of Eden, you think about like a tropical or subtropical area with all kinds of variety of animals and stuff, plenty of water everywhere, all these things. You don't think like a dry, desolate land that you have to force irrigate, you know? So I thought he made a good point with that, because when you go over to the Gulf of Mexico, actually, I would say most of it, especially right along the Gulf, is actually very fertile. It's very fertile. And even I spent a lot of time in Texas, of course. I spent a lot of time everywhere in the United States, Florida as well. But when you get along the coast there, it's very lush. It's very green. There's all kinds of animals and critters and birds and everything. It's just amazing, the variety. And it's it's fairly humid, so that humidity obviously promotes life in most cases, so it's conducive to that. So it's very interesting thinking about this. Okay, so the other thing I'll mention is that let's see how I want to go with this here. Yeah, I'll bring this up. So the Fertile Crescent is that kind of area is, well, generally, I mean, the Arabian Peninsula, of course, primarily, but it's kind of where Islam is claimed to have started. It's certainly Arabic in origin, the Arabian Peninsula and that whole area. And I'm talking about Mesopotamia, of course. So if the claim is that the Fertile Crescent's actually over here, I want to look for the symbology. I want to look for indications that might be the case. And you might think that you're really pulling at straws, but you're really not. And it's really not like going outside of the box that much. Pretty clear, isn't it, Karen, in terms of the information?
Yeah, it's very compelling.
Okay, so one of the things that I kind of channeled last night is that if you look at the crescent moon and the star, which is one of the emblems of Islam, a lot of times it's claimed that the crescent is, of course, the moon, and the star is generally thought to be Venus. And the moon and Venus are both very loving and kind planets. But the thing is they can also be very lustful, for lack of a better word. It's not always the beneficent. Sometimes it's the maleficent qualities. If it gets out of hand, that causes lots of destruction. So in any case, if you look at if you look at the Gulf of Mexico, so if we're going with this line of thinking that the Gulf of Mexico is the Fertile Crescent, then that star would actually be kind of around Tampa. And there's a lot of information in that video about that exact area. Even the Alabama coast and the west coast of Florida that goes down through Tampa. That whole area is kind of like the potentially the focal point. So if we're saying, hey, I wonder where they actually got that symbol from, maybe it's from the Gulf of Mexico, and the capital of whatever used to be there was around Alabama and Florida, the west coast, which is where that star would have been. They're saying, okay, this is a Fertile Crescent, and this particularly where the star is was actually the very beginning, which is probably, underneath the Gulf of Mexico right now, depending on how you're looking at it and how you're drawing that if you draw it on a map, if you superimpose that. I thought that was very interesting because a lot of the focus of this video is about Florida, and specifically about the west coast of Florida, which again is where that star would be if you kind of superimpose that. The other thing that I didn't pick this up the first time I watched this video. It's why I try to watch things many times. But supposedly Louisiana is called the Crescent City. And there's different reasons people claim that. But how about one of them is that it's on the Fertile Crescent, which is the Gulf of Mexico. And that's kind of the big one here, and that's what I'll be focusing on. Okay, the next part, Florida has it's essentially subtropical. The Florida Keys are almost tropical. And what tropical means is that it's within the tropics, which is the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Anywhere between that is called the tropics, and that's where it's warm all year, no matter what. It's always going to be warm in that zone. And even hot, actually, I would say more like hot. Okay, so, but it's subtropical, certainly Florida's subtropical, as well as a lot of parts of Texas are as well. And so Florida has the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world, according to this video, which again is absolutely pivotal because you can't have life without springs. And the thing about it is that when you're comparing this area to the area that's claimed to be the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, the area, when you don't have to struggle for your water source, when you literally just bend down, there's like huge amounts of, and it's unbelievably clear water. It's beautiful, guys. If you've never seen some of the springs in Florida, I've taken boat rides on it before. I've had, of course, the spring water. It's really, really good quality spring water. You feel really vitalized. You feel really good when you drink it. And just to be around it, Karen, I mean, it's so nice to listen to and to watch the sunshine off of it. You've got like the manatees swimming in there and everything. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so that's something that's interesting. It's like, well, the Fertile Crescent, maybe it would be a little bit easier to believe if the water was in ample supply, rather than we have to divert everything and make canals. I'm not saying you can't do it, but when you think about a beginning or a Garden of Eden area, you tend to think more of like a tropical or subtropical, not so much as arid land that you have to irrigate. Okay, the Gulf Stream. Again, this is everything I'm going through right now is according to the video, so I want to give credit to that channel. Okay, the Gulf Stream is, I suppose, called the mother of the oceans. It produces this wonderful warm water that's then distributed up the Atlantic. It keeps the British Isles very warm, much warmer than it should be for the latitude it's at. It's very high north, actually. And so it distributes, the wonderful, warm, life-giving waters, coming from the Gulf of Mexico area. So that's something else I found very interesting. Okay, Mesopotamia, which is what the Fertile Crescent is, traditionally called that area. Mesopotamia means land between the rivers, essentially. And how about Mesoamerica? So it is the middle, it's the middle of the Americas. I get that, but it's also the same prefix as Mesopotamia. So that's interesting, especially partnered with the other information that I went over and what I'm about to reveal. There's a lot more coming. Okay, so we've got that. The description of the Garden of Eden in the Bible is that there's 4 rivers. They come to a single head or a single origin source. And again, according to this video, there's only one place in the world that has a 4-headed river. And it's actually a place called Lake Seminole. It's on the border of Georgia and Florida in the Florida Panhandle region. And if you look at it, sure enough, it does have the same description. Now, again, it sounds completely far out, but just stick with me because I'm going to go through this whole thing. And, people who know me and Karen, everyone knows I don't waste my time with things. I'm not going to come to a presentation if I don't think it's adequate information, if I don't think it's believable and helpful. And so since I'm doing that, if I'm presenting a topic, people should know that this is something that's probably important. Because if I'm spending my time with it, the person who is a master astrologer, I know the biology extremely well, both in the West and the East. Most of the spiritual traditions. If I'm paying attention to it, it's probably worth paying attention to. Okay, so that's really interesting. And by the way, that area is right around where that star would be. What I was just talking about, which maybe was maybe that was the original Garden of Eden, right at that star right there. And the Apalachicola River actually, I believe, runs right to that star area, which is one of the tributaries that comes off of this 4-headed river, which was supposedly the Garden of Eden. So that's something else I want people to start considering is this area called Lake Seminole in Florida, really close to the Gulf Coast. Just think about that for this presentation. Let's just assume for this presentation that that's the Garden of Eden as we continue with this line of thought. Okay, so we've got that. Of the 28 trees mentioned in the Bible, 27 of them are located in the Apalachicola River Valley, which I just mentioned. That river valley, it's one of the rivers that comes off of this 4-headed river, which is essentially the description of the Garden of Eden, that you had a river coming out in 4 directions. Now, I had always conceived of it as that kind of like a river in each of the cardinal directions, one to the north, south, east, and west. So I looked at Hyperborea for that. I looked at all kinds of things for that. But, this works too. I can't say this is not the model. It could be. Okay, so, right. And so the one that's important here, let's see what I have written down. Just apologize for 1 second here. Okay, right. So there's a wood that's mentioned. It's called gopher wood in the Bible. And apparently people have not been able to see what that is. I believe it was only mentioned 1 time. But there's a wood in the Florida Panhandle. And I don't know if I had written it down here, but it's a very, Terrea. It's called the Terrea something. It's a very rare tree. It only grows on like the east bank. This is really weird again, very strange. The east bank of the Apalachicola River Valley right there, and it runs right up through this area, right into this 4-headed river, which is claimed to be the Garden of Eden. So the ark, Noah's Ark, was made out of this wood. It was made out of what was called gopher wood. And there's people that believe that this one specific wood, which by the way grows nowhere else in the world except the Apalachicola River Valley right there, extremely light, I think one of the lightest woods in the world. It's like very malleable and flexible. It's like a perfect thing for an ark if you're going to build an ark. So keep that in the back of your mind too. Not just the fact that this very specific wood grows in this area, but that 27 of the 28 species mentioned in the Bible of the trees, I believe that were mentioned in the Garden of Eden or around the Garden of Eden, are in this one section of the Florida Panhandle. So that's really interesting, and it's really important to just try to put these things together and to think about, well, what is the credibility with this? Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind. I will return to that in a minute. I'll return to that in a few minutes here about the ark, because that's an important topic. Okay, the Mississippi River. You look at that word, it looks like Isis. Okay, and Isis, of course, was ancient Egypt. So again, we have these parallels of things from the east side and the west side. And that's going to come in more importance in a few minutes here as we talk about something Karen mentioned before the show, and something that I've really focused in on in terms of one of the topics that came up here that's going to be really important and helpful.
Right now is the perfect time to heal your mind, body, and spirit. But for some, it may be more difficult, as there are those that have experienced unexplained phenomenon, such as alien abduction and implantation. Many that have experienced this don't have anyone or anything they can turn to for help. Mainstream medical practices will not acknowledge the presence or treatment of these implants. They can be synthetic, holographic, energetic, or etheric. They can block your energy pathways in order to alter your feelings, behaviors, preferences, and limit your potential. Karen Holton has created the Quantum Health Transformation Program and the Alien Implant Remedy. The Alien Implant Remedy is a proprietary blend of essential oils, crystal frequencies, orgone energy, and guided meditation designed to work together to move energy and dissolve the implants. Due to current conditions, supply is limited, so check them out today. These kits provide the right combination of energetic frequencies specifically designed to disable and dissolve energetic implants that may be holding you back. Karen Holton also offers energy and wellness coaching, ascension workshops, Zendome's orgone generators, and spiritual support. Visit KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com or click the link in the description to find out more and get your alien implant remedy today.
Okay, some of the prefixes here in the Americas from Mexico, which is Mex. So Mex, Mezzo, Mecca. Mecca's going to come back in a minute here. Olmec. We've got the Musco, the Muskogee tribe, which is Muslim. It's the same essentially first three letters there. I'd already mentioned the LDS story. It talked about Jackson County, Missouri, which is where Joseph Smith claims that the Garden of Eden was. Jackson County, Missouri is really not that far from the Apalachicola River Valley in Florida. So that's one of the things I think about. It's just, it's not a really short distance, but it's not that bad. I mean, you could walk there if you knew the way, and there's resources, plenty of resources along the way. You could even take the Mississippi River. What you do is you take the Missouri River to the Mississippi River down to the Gulf, and then the Gulf just takes you right into Apalachicola River. You follow it east. So that would be very easy to get to. And if you went overland, it's probably not that bad either, to be honest. So the thing about that is, that's where I've been thinking about the Garden of Eden in the Americas for a long time in Missouri. But you know what? Maybe it was actually, maybe they moved back and forth. I don't know. Maybe it was a larger area that was the Garden of Eden, which also encompassed Jackson County, Missouri, and also the Panhandle, Florida, and most of the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, so I've got that point. We've got, and this is what Karen had mentioned to me, and it's one of my favorite points of this whole presentation, is that the Gulf of Mexico And and there's a great visual of this in the documentary. Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea are essentially mirror images of each other. It's not just the Gulf of Mexico, it's actually the Gulf of Mexico plus a lot of the islands that are moved through the Caribbean. It's kind of that whole water portion inside of the Antilles and inside of Hispaniola and all these other islands, plus the Gulf of Mexico. That water area is essentially an inverse image of the Mediterranean. I actually did a measurement last night because I wanted to see it. It's about the same exact mileage from east to west. It's very weird. And when you look at the picture, it's like, oh, it looks like someone like, I think it's actually flipped and reversed. It's like the exact opposite. And it looks like almost the same exact shapes and stuff. It's really weird. And that brings up a whole other topic. When, hopefully we'll have a few minutes to talk about that towards the end here. But that's really strange, especially seeing that there's these parallels between the Americas and the Mesopotamia area, and even in Egypt and everything. One of the things that the video says and the visual shows is actually that the Mississippi River in the Americas is the equivalent of the Nile River in Africa. And actually, when you flip it like that, they do actually match up. It's really strange, guys. This is worth like many months of meditation to see what you can pull from this, because something is going on. There's a lot more, and I'm going to try to get to most of it here. Okay, so we've got that. We've got I talked about Islam possibly actually originating in the Americas, that it actually started here and then it moved over there later. And there's a lot more information that I'm going to talk about with that. And we'll kind of get into that in a second here. I've got, let's see here. Oh, the native, okay, this is a big one. The Native Americans, what they wear, their clothing. It's their dress, it's their hats. There's a lot of tribes that really look Middle Eastern, and I'm not stretching this, guys. They really do look like they're from a Middle Eastern area. The first time this came up was actually for me when I was researching Oak Island, and the Mi'kmaq tribe, they have a lot of what I would call potentially Scythian qualities. If you want to look that up, they wear the Scythian hats, which is the really long kind of pointed hats that come back like that. That's that general area. It's that Turkey kind of Ottoman, former Ottoman Empire area. But the other one that's probably the weirdest one for me, and I believe it's called the Beothuk people. They're actually in Newfoundland. And when you look at them, they look like Moroccans. Their facial color, their features. They've got the kind of the fez cap on. They've got the long draping clothing, that looks like a Middle Eastern style. So how did that happen? And it doesn't look like it was new. It looks like that's their culture. They've been doing that for potentially thousands of years. And then it gets even more interesting because when the continents used to be connected, that part of the world was connected to what was essentially is modern day Morocco. They were actually like joined physically. The land was joined. So then it brings up a whole other issue in terms of the splitting of the continents, which I believe is pivotal to understand this whole picture. So maybe they didn't sail over here. Maybe they actually lived on both sides before this chasm opened up and created the Atlantic Ocean. And then they were split. And then after a few thousand years, they forgot about maybe they don't forget about their origins. Maybe they just don't talk about it, because who's going to believe that? Oh, we were here when the continent split. Well, actually, I believe that actually did happen. I believe humans were living when that happened. And I believe it was not millions of years ago. I believe it was a few thousand years ago. Shocking information. That actually might be where one of the floods came. I'm certainly sure that's where one of the floods came from, was the splitting of the continents. And then you got a huge tsunami coming in of water washing over everything. Okay, so we've got that. I talked about the hats. The Creek native tribe, it sure sounds a lot like Greek and Greek. And there's a lot of references to that in terms of some of the largest Greek populations, I believe, are in Florida, in the United States. There's actually Narco is going to come out with a new video on that, a new documentary on that topic. So I'm excited to see that too. Something I don't know hardly anything about, but when you look at the etymology is king. I know Karen sees the value in that. I learned about that from Santos Bonacci, of course. Pay attention to the words, because they're going to tell you about the origin of things. And it never let me down. It's actually never let me down. Okay, we've got the Seminole. So the Seminole tribe in Florida. Sure sounds a lot like Semitic. And the Semitic is, Jewish origin in terms of the genetics. Talks about a Semitic people. So maybe they started over here again. And of course, Joseph Smith's story corroborates that. He says that, he talks about how it's dual, because he talks about how some of the ancient Semitic tribes came over to the Americas, but he also talks about this as being the original land, the original origin point for humanity. So maybe they came over here because they knew this is where it started. So all they're doing is they're coming back to where it started, which it's completely 180 from what we're taught. It's a lot to take in, but just keep bearing with me here. It's worth it, I promise. Okay, so we've got I already talked about Muskogee, which is the root of Muslim. It's the same MUS. Lots of other tribes have that MUS as well. Okay, I've got Muslim architecture in Florida. There's a lot of that influence. You wonder why they focus so much on that architecture. Some of it's, I would say, new. Some of it, a lot of people believe, is actually from Tartaria, which is this vast world of technology and culture supposedly that existed before there was this great mud flood and there was a reset. Another interesting, we should do a show on that sometime, Karen, about Tartaria. Okay, we've got the Muskogee flag. This one, again, I had passed over this the first time. The Muskogee flag features a crescent and a star. What is that doing there? And again, if this stood alone, I'd be like, okay, you can come up with that motif, but it doesn't, and it keeps going. It's on the Mi'kmaq flag too, I believe, the star and the crescent. Okay, then you've got here you go. Here's another one for you, the Caribbean. Well, the Caribbean is Arabian. That's what it is. So I don't know how that happened. I don't know who was over here first. I'm starting to, in fact, I'm way past that. I actually do believe this is where it originated. And I'll talk about the Ark, the Ark and the Great Flood in a second here, in terms of how that fits in. Cuba, country of Cuba, same word as the Kaaba. The Kaaba, which is, of course, the center of the Islamic tradition, where people walk around 7 times. They actually will rotate around that. And there's a stone in there of supposedly meteoric origin. It's kind of mysterious. It's this big black cube. And guess what I checked out last night, Karen? I checked out the latitude. It's within like 15 miles of each other. It's the same latitude. Okay, so what is going on here? And again, talking about this mirror thing, this flipping of the images. Somehow Cuba is like the North America version of the Kaaba, which is like where Islam, it's looking like there could potentially be an origination point in the Americas. Okay, we've got the Aztec language is said to be of the Ottomangian language line. And again, Ottoman, we talk about the Ottoman Empire, which comes from that Turkey area, which again is not here. It's over there. It's on the other side. Okay, I've got this was one of the big ones that I picked up on a week ago, was that the word, the Cimarron. The Cimarron word is a common word in the West, especially Cimarron River, Cimarron grassland, stuff like that. How about Sumerian? Cimarron, Sumerian. Pretty close, pretty close. That's probably the most stretch you're going to hear me make this whole presentation. And that's not, for me, that's not even that big of a stretch. Okay, we've got, this one's good, Karen. This is one of my favorite ones. We've got Alabama. Allah. Bama.
Yes.
Okay, and it keeps going. Just wait for the rest. We've got Allah, Bama. We've got Tallahassee.
Yes.
Which is Allah again. It's right in this segment, and it's a segment again that this is original to me. Is I'm saying that star, the star and crescent, that star was the origination point. That's right there at Tallahassee in Alabama. Okay, you've got the county in Florida, Alachua or Alachua. I lived actually for a time just south of that county, so I remember seeing that. I looked at it, I'm like, that's an interesting word. Again, I didn't know what to do with it until now. Okay, you've got Dallas, which is Dallas, or of Allah, Dallas. Okay, you've got it's unbelievable. You've got Talladega, Alabama. Allah again. And then you've got, I Okay, I can't read what I wrote in that one. But anyway, it keeps going, and there's more in the presentation. That's enough for now. But if you're seeing this prefix everywhere, and when you look at everything as a composite, it is really, really compelling, and it's actually impossible to look away, in my opinion. It's actually asking you, please look. This is the information you need to see. Okay, the South Carolina flag of the United States. It has the star and the crescent. Now, when I drove through there, I'd always wondered, I'm like, that's weird. And I actually was, and I actually remember this now. I'm just remembering this right now. When I crossed the state line from Georgia to South Carolina, and I saw that flag or the insignia, I'm like, that reminds me of Saudi Arabia. And this was like 10 years ago, Karen. And I had this thought. I'm like, what the hell is that doing here? It doesn't make sense. Why do you choose to put that on your flag? And there's a palm tree as well. And I get the palm tree because it's subtropical, but I actually don't eat. Well, now there are types of palms on the coast there. But the point is that maybe there's something else to it. And again, when you look at it as a full picture, then you start to see something's coming together. Okay, I've got a couple more here. I've got, we'll go back to the Ark for a minute. Arkansas. Okay, I saw that a long time ago, and I said, why does that remind me of the Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of Noah? Maybe there's something going on with that, talking about this being the homeland. Canada, obviously very relevant to you, Karen, could come from the Canaanites, which is essentially the Phoenician people, which there's a lot of talk about how they came over here to mine copper in the Keweenaw Peninsula of Michigan, which is, essentially Canada's right there. So again, we have these connections, these really interesting connections. Okay, Texas, Lone Star State. There's that single star again. That one may be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm okay with that because you got Dallas, you've got Allah in there. You've actually got other towns. You've got a town in Texas called Iran. I don't know if that's how they pronounce it. There's an extra A in it. There's a town in Texas called, they say Palestine, but it's, spelled like Palestine. There's Carthage in Texas. It's unbelievable. Some people could say, and I get it, that's an ode to the, other world, which I get, but not when you're looking at everything as this composite piece. There's no way in hell. And I heard it myself first time when I was in New Mexico, and I heard Arabic in the wind. And I said, that doesn't even make sense to me because they weren't here. Well, now the question is, or were they here? And the question, and it's already been resolved for me. I don't need more. And I've got a couple more points here. I'm almost done, Karen. Okay, America. The name Amr, which is of an Islamic origin. Okay, that's interesting. Some people say Amerigo Vespucci. I get that. I've heard of most of them, guys. I'm just saying. In concert with everything else I'm talking about, it sure looks like there was a lot of Islamic influence here. And the question is, how did that happen? And which way did it happen? It start here, go over there, or did it start over on the east side and come over to the west side? That's the question. Okay, you've got Sarasota, Florida. Saracen. Saracen is the word for the old world, what people used to call Muslim people. They said Saracens. That one's pretty compelling to me. I came up with this one. I'm very proud of this one. This one's original to me. The Timucua people of Florida, which is one of the native tribes. If you look at that word backwards, it's essentially Achmet or Achmet. And that's one of the always things I do. I always flip words and I see what does it look like backwards, because you're going to see other meaning in there too. I mean, that's like 1 in a million chance of that happening. It's a very obscure word. It's not a common word. Achmed, a very clearly Arabic name. The Timucua people of Florida, backwards. Okay, long life in Florida in terms of the Garden of Eden. You're going to need good quality water, which again has the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world, according to the video. I actually believe that. If you look at the aquifer, it's massive. So that would promote long life. It was often referred to as the fountain of youth, of course. This is why I think a lot of people were coming over here looking for that origin point. Fountain of youth to me is also, it goes with Atlantis and the Garden of Eden. I think it might be the same story, probably is. Okay, now here's something interesting about the Greeks. The Garden of the Hesperides. The Hesperides is the garden of, Hesperides, paradise, I suppose, comes from the word Hesperides. They were said, this one's good, Karen. I'm sure you love this one, about the golden apples. Well, maybe they're talking about the orange. because it kind of looks like an apple. It's like at the same height, you pick it off, and that would be, roughly, some of them actually are not bright orange. Some of them are kind of like yellowish orange. So I can see that. And it gets better because of what else is here to support that? Plus, I already said the creek in the Greek, the Greek legend of the Garden of the Hesperides, all the stuff goes together. But check this one out. So part of the Greek legend also was Hades. And Hades was this, and again, I didn't miss it, but I forgot it because I can't remember everything. But the country of Haiti is in the Caribbean, Arabian, which the thing about it is that the description of where Hades was located, it was actually said to be to the south or below the Garden of Hesperides. And when you look at where Haiti is, it's exactly south of Florida, which is the land of the golden apples, which is where the oranges were. And you've got this Creek and Greek connection in terms of how that's kind of their traditional homeland there through Florida. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. I've got like 2 more points here, like 3 more points. Okay, some people say that Bimini in the Bahamas they were looking for the the Fountain of Youth is where they thought that location was. Well, again, according to the video, I have not corroborated this. I'm just going to take his word for it right now. But supposedly there's actually a severe lack of fresh water in the Bahamas. It's hard to come by. So if you were looking for it there, but you go a little further to the west and you have this huge supply of fresh water, maybe they were looking more for Florida. They knew it was in that region. And, there's the stories, of course, the Bermuda Triangle. This comes into it, Karen. I'm still trying to piece that part together. I have a lot of thoughts about that. But the Bermuda Triangle is right there in that area. And then a little further to the west, you've got all the fresh water. And even in the Yucatan Peninsula, you've got the cenotes, which, again, apparently there's a lot more like hot springs in that area versus drinking water that's at room temp or, cool water, 55-degree Fahrenheit water or something like in the springs. But regardless, there's a huge amount of fresh water along the Gulf, especially in the Yucatan and Florida, from what I know. Okay, we've got, I already talked about Torreya. This one is also original to me. I will take credit for this one. The Torreya tree, you look at that word and I'm saying, what is going on with that word? That's interesting. Well, all I did was I flipped it, Karen. I flipped it backwards. And what I got was Ayurot. Okay, this is unbelievable. This is seriously unbelievable. Because the story that is told in Ayurot is what I'm referring to is Ararat. So according to this video, and I actually do believe this now, the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of Noah, I think the Ark of the Covenant was over here too. That's probably over in the Arkansas area. So the Ark of Noah, created in the panhandle of Florida, the Apalachicola River Valley, from this rare gopher wood called the Torreya tree. And it only grows right alongside that. You've got 27 of the 28 of the trees from the Bible growing in that section of Florida, which is, I guess, the only place in the world that has that many of them in the same area. Very convincing. Okay, so let's say the ark was created there, and it actually, the flood came, covered all the land, and that the currents brought this ark over to the Middle East area. And it landed on Mount Ararat, which is on the border of Armenia and Eastern Turkey. So if we're going to give that point, then the part about this is that for me, it is looking like the origin was actually over here for all the Arabic culture, for the Garden of Eden, for Atlantis, for all of these origin places over in the Americas. And then what happened is that there was a repopulation event after the flood and after the ship had landed on Mount Ararat. And then Mesopotamia was where they started over. They actually started again. And then since we have this lack of knowledge and we can't remember our history, a lot of it was destroyed in the flood, I believe, and there's lots of other reasons for it. We have forgotten that it started over here. And then the repopulation event in terms of Mesopotamia, I think it's about 5 to 6,000 BC, somewhere in there. But then yet you're finding, this is what's interesting too, and I just read this the other night as well, is that there's cities that are buried. We know about Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, which is the new one in southern Turkey, that they're actually buried beneath like a lot of debris. and they had to dig way down to find it. Well, I heard, I was thinking about this at the time. Well, maybe they were covered by the flood, and it was actually a deposit from tsunamis that generated lots of dirt and debris and sand and stuff, and buried all these different places. That's not the only one. The other one was the old Jericho, which is in the Dead Sea area, also buried beneath a huge amount of debris. So what I'm starting to think, actually, I'll just come out and say, this is what I think happened now. I think that there were some of these pre-world cities and towns, and they were covered in the deluge. And then there was a repopulation event that actually left the Americas in Noah's Ark, came over and floated over and landed on, which I believe was divinely appointed for it to land on Mount Ararat. I just mentioned the Terea tree, which backwards is essentially the word Ararat. I mean, how does that happen? That's the story. It's such a distinctive story that comes from that region and from this video here. And that was the claim in the video, but he didn't say that. I don't think he even saw that, because not everyone flips words like I do to see the meaning. Okay, my last point, Karen, Tampa Bay, again, which is the area that I'm talking about for this, maybe this capital to be located, or the star of the crescent to be located. Supposedly there's the oldest and the largest stone anchors found in the world. And some of them are up in, it's actually very remarkable. Some of them are in like retirement community neighborhoods along Tampa Bay. You just see this massive piece of stone that has this huge bored out, very circular hole in it. And you wonder, first of all, what is that doing here? Did someone bring that in, or was it there originally? And the claim and I don't know if it was this video, it was probably one of his other videos that I saw, but the claim is that there was a tsunami that actually brought them from the ocean, dredged it off the bottom of the ocean, and deposited it on the land. And I think where that tsunami might have come from is this Chicxulub crater on the Yucatan Peninsula, which according to scientists, they say that's what took the dinosaurs out. Maybe that was also what generated the Great Flood, or maybe it was both that happened. I don't know which way it went. But when you look at the proximity, that's a huge event that happened. And we know that crater is right off the Yucatan. So, and even the shape of the, I've thought about this before, the shape of the Gulf, maybe that was an even larger meteor impact. When I say larger, I'm talking about like beyond our comprehension. Even the Chicxulub crater is fairly large, but if you're talking about an impact that created the Gulf of Mexico, that wiped out the cradle of civilization, and wiped out the original Fertile Crescent. And I believe that all these things are directed. Of course, I believe in timelines since I'm an astrologer, and that things happen at the right time and in the proper order. So it's not something that was like, oh, it just so happened to knock out the civilization and to bury all the proof that existed. No, it's that it was time. Maybe there was abuse of technology or abuse of crystals or something in terms of Atlantis. It was the right time for that to happen. I prefer a non-destructive transition. I don't support shit like that, excuse my language. I believe we can peaceably transition between ages and people can go where they belong. I don't like seeing destruction at that level. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Even volcanoes and tsunamis killing people, and Indonesia, just huge amounts of people and loss of life. It's like, come on, whoever you believe the God of this planet is, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. And you say, oh, God wanted to do that. No, I don't believe that. I'm sorry. So then the question is, who is the God of the solar system, which we've probably gone into many times? I believe it's essentially Saturn, which is also the same person as Satan. And there's good qualities and not so good qualities. But the point is that you don't need to have these destructive events in order for people to have spiritual progress. There's actually very effective, and I think we're going through right now, metaphysical shifts that can happen where you literally, and I've said this for a long time, Karen, since we've known each other. I said one day you just wake up and you're in another dimension. You actually don't even know. I don't even believe you can prove that when you go to sleep and you wake up, you're in the same place that you were when you went to sleep. And I've felt some of these shifts, especially over the past couple of years. And I feel that I've been in probably the whole grid has been deposited in these different dimensions, so these different dimensional levels that are essentially parallel versions of Earth. I can feel them now because I'm paying attention. But like I wake up one day, I'm like, no, I'm somewhere different. I look around, I'm like, yeah, I get that things look pretty much the same, but this is not the same place. You can feel the energy is different, the etheric grid is different, and all this stuff. So that's my presentation, Karen. Again, I would really want to encourage people to go to Old World Florida YouTube channel. Please watch what Narco Longo has put together. The title of the specific documentary that we're talking about here that I recapped today is called The True Fertile Crescent. Please spend your time doing that. It's going to be well worth your time, and I would love to hear feedback from people. Give him support too, guys. Let him know if you want to that you heard about it on our show, if that's where you first heard it. And I'm trying to form a cohesive group of people. We're all different. We have different perspectives, but this is a vital story. We have to get to, and it's already been developed so much. A lot of things I haven't talked about. You guys know I've done a lot of the mound builder research. You've got the story of the giants. I think the giants originated in the Americas as well, because that seems to be where most of the giant skeletons have claimed to have been found. Even through the Mediterranean, of course, as well, some of the islands like Sardinia and Malta and these places, the Azores. But I think they actually started here. I think this was the land of the giants originally. I think that the land of Nod in the Bible was actually eastern Missouri, where Cain killed his brother. I've been to that area, and guess what? And again, I don't make stuff up. I go in with a blank slate, but when I crossed a certain longitude, it felt very sleepy. I was very lulled into almost like this sleep state. And there was also kind of an aggressive, malevolent energy over there. Then when I went back to the west, which was where the Garden of Eden was, it was okay, But when I went to the east, which is where Cain is said to have gone, which is the same direction, it feels really strange. Again, this is on the ground research. Look at the story and then go visit the site and see what you think.
Wow, thank you, Dave. That was a lot of information, and I actually just wanted to add a couple of points. There's no point me saying information you've already said, but in case the viewers didn't know, there are thousands of pyramids in Florida. I did not know that. And until World War II, Florida was commonly believed to be the Garden of Eden. In fact, so many religions and spiritual people believed that Florida was the Garden of Eden, that many, many, many religions came down and set up shop in Florida. And it wasn't until World War II that they changed that whole thing. And in the video that we're recommending, and it's in the links below, you'll see all kinds of newspaper clippings and information to back that up.
Yeah, the other thing too, Karen.
Sorry, go ahead.
The thing about the pyramids too, Karen, is that some people believe they actually built golf courses over them to try to conceal them, which is very plausible to me. Because Florida is a very flat area, guys. Except for the Lake Placid region, which is like the South Central Florida. It's pretty much completely flat. So you wonder where all these hills came from, and that'd be a damn good way to conceal something. Hey, let's just build a golf course here, and let's build a golf course everywhere, and no one's going to know there used to be pyramids here. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Sorry, we're just almost out of time. So I just want to quickly add to what you said. So the Caribbean is very well known for piracy, and that is all derived from Arabic culture. And the pirate cutlass came from the Arabic sword called scimitar. And
it's like Cimarron too.
Huh?
Cimarron, scimitar, Cimmerian.
Yes.
The pirates, I believe, are from Somalia, which of course is right in there, right in the Red Sea area.
Also, they're finding out now, and they've genetically backed this up, that the red hair and red beard people originated in Florida. And the reason they think that is because there are all these bog burials where the bodies are actually preserved for thousands and thousands of years. And they have found the identical people and bog burials in Scandinavia. And so they've run DNA, and they have found out that there are all kinds of people, not just the red-haired, red-beard people, but also sorry, I forgot my thought. I'm getting tired. Sorry about
Karen,
that.
Karen,
But they're just finding out that all of their DNA actually supports them coming from Northern European. So there's even evidence that supports that the Irish and the Scottish came from Florida. There's evidence to support that the Greeks originated in Florida. There's evidence to support that the Muslim people originated from Florida. There's all this evidence, and it, like what Dave said, it's like a mirror image or a flip of what we believe to be a Mediterranean phenomenon is actually happened in Florida first. So I thought that was really super interesting. The other thing I wanted to say is Dave was talking about all the natural springs that are in Florida. And the native people who drank from those springs lived for hundreds of years and were in perfect health. And
very tall people too. The Seminoles are very tall people, the Seminole people.
Super tall.
Giant.
And then there's the whole thing about giants. There is tons and tons and tons of evidence, scientific evidence that giants existed. And of course, it would take giants to lift those huge anchor stones. And like Dave said, they're perfectly bored out, and there's evidence of where ropes, wore away the rock. And the only beings really strong enough to maneuver, because some of these stones weighed between 5,000 and 10,000 pounds. So the only people that could really maneuver these were these giants. And so it even looks like the giants and the men of renown that are spoken of in the Bible, there is evidence that they also came from the southern United States. So it's very, very interesting. So we've seen evidence that the Ottoman, Greek, and other cultures originated in Florida. And this is also what I would consider further evidence of our history being forbidden, erased, covered up. And I think that's also why this exploration is so important, just to expand the way we think, our critical thinking skills, find out a whole bunch of facts that probably not in the encyclopedia or on Wikipedia. But anyway, I'm so glad, Dave, that you came and did all this work to present this information. And so we're going to close out the show now. But before we go, Dave, why don't you tell people what you're up to, where they can find you? Of course, Dave is my co-host on the Aliens and Astrology show. So if you like what you're hearing on the Quantum Guide show, go over to the Aliens and Astrology show, and you're going to get a whole bunch more information. And Dave and I also share more of what we know in that show as well, because Dave and I both are the content creators for that show. So anyway, Dave, where can people find you? What are you up to? Do you have any closing comments before we say bye-bye for this week?
Yeah, that's great, Karen. Thanks for adding all of those pieces. That's why I love conversations too, because we get the perspectives, things that I haven't focused on that were more important to other people, and then together, again, we're trying to get things together. We're trying to build a good team. We get the information we need, especially when you can kind of refer it to the other person, see what they think about it. So thanks for sharing that, Karen. I just wanted to add really quickly that the red-haired giants were said to have been in the Lovelock Cave in Nevada. And I actually have been in that cave, and I just did it fairly recently. And I'm just, standing there thinking about it. Didn't feel weird. I didn't feel any kind of weird energy. So I don't know if that was true or not, but that's the Paiute story. That's the Paiute legend in that part of the country there. So, and I hadn't thought about I'm glad you brought that up, Karen, about the redheaded people essentially originating in Florida, because I had not thought about that. And maybe they started there, moved over to Ireland. I do want to get back to the last point here, is that there's, in my belief, and I've done a presentation with General Lee, his podcast out of England. I'm actually about to do another one this week with him about actually extraterrestrial topic, which is, I don't do a lot of that, but I love doing it when I can. And the thing about it is that what I had mentioned was that the Appalachian Mountains, they actually are one continuous mountain chain. They go from Alabama, and again, Alabama, just to reinforce that, all the way up through Maine, the state of Maine, into New Brunswick, Canada. I believe the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec as well, Newfoundland, and then it continues actually in the British Isles and the west coast of Scandinavia. It's all the same mountain chain. And I believe that was actually the Atlantean mountain chain. I don't know if people have said that before, but I believe that's kind of where everything originated in terms of the whole world. But when I see these cultures on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, and it looks like there's a lot of similarities, what I think is, well, let's put the continents back together. Let's see where the different parts connect. And then let's be open to thinking that maybe they split when humans were on the land, and that a lot of those stories are coming from that. One of the big ones for me is I talked about the Beothuk people in terms of how they look like Moroccan people and they dress that way. But the fact also is that the Amazon people, well, the people of North Africa, who a lot of people refer to as the Berbers, they don't call themselves that. They call themselves the Amazon people. So it's spelled differently, but it's Amazingh, I believe. So how did that happen? And this is something else I had in the back of my head for the longest time. They have facial tattoos that I never was able to figure out. What is that? Where do they even come from? How does that fit into it? Well, if you go to the Amazon rainforests, that's what the people have. They have a lot of facial tattoos, and it looks like they're from South America. So what I want to add to this narrative, I have a lot of things to add, but the most important point that I want to add to this, for anyone who sees it and wants to jump on with us and support us, is that I think that these things were all connected and they developed, and then what we're seeing now is what happened after the continents split. But I think it was one unit, one landmass. I think that happened. Actually, a lot of people in the Mormon church believe the continents split when Jesus resurrected. That was, 2,000 years ago, supposedly. Some people don't even believe he was real. I do. I believe it happened, but I believe it's many levels. I believe a lot of that story has been taken over and manipulated as well. But my take-home point today is that think about the continents being connected. And then now when you're walking through all these videos, think about it like that. And if without the ocean problem in the way, you can walk, people do it all the time. They walk the Appalachian Trail. I just read one of my pamphlets from that. You can walk that. If they were connected, you walk right into UK. You walk right into Sweden. And then everything else is connected. Then you just walk down through Europe and into North Africa. It's not that hard to do that if you have time and resources and you know how to navigate. So my last point I want to make today is the one thing I didn't mention, or one of the things that are most interesting, intriguing to me, is the fact that you've got some tribes in the Americas that they're called the Abenaki and also the Anasazi, which for me is the Anunnaki. And one of the videos that I saw recently by a Zuni tribal elder, his name is Greg Yawakia. The Zuni tribe is in primarily New Mexico, but it goes over into Arizona as well. And one of the videos he had is, and I could not believe this when I heard this. I clicked on it because of the title. He said, when the Anunnaki, Enki and Enlil, when they brought us over here, they brought us to Zuni, which is where our homeland was established. And so I'm saying, wait a minute. So how were they over here? I thought they were supposed to be over in the Middle East, around Eridu and Ur and Uruk and all these places. So maybe the Anunnaki came here first. There's other stories of the Anunnaki being at Lake Titicaca as well. The natives, I've heard the natives from their own tongue describing how they were there. The Watchers were here. They were helping us to build things and helping with our culture. So I'll leave it up to you guys to determine what you want, but there's so much information here. I hope you watch this video over and over. Go give Narco some support over his Old World Florida channel. If I can provide any services, you guys know where to find me. The links, all the links are in the description. I've got a YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and I actually have an updated list of services on the About section of my YouTube channel. So if I can do anything for you guys, let me know. I'm happy to help you. Thank you, Karen, for having me. I appreciate it. It's always a good discussion, and I think we're finally starting to get somewhere with this world origin story. I've probably never been more excited. And what better way to bring us into the new world and the new earth than to tell us the truth about our origins? And so when I see this coming up and I see these things happening, it's like, okay, it's the perfect time because we're about to transition into a new world. And before we do that, we need to know how things happened. And this information is not going away. I guarantee that. There are way too many people interested in this. I watched a podcast last night on Narco's channel. He's got 50 people calling in wanting to talk with him about it. And I loved it because you see the different perspectives. And the thing about it is that let's get this information in front of young people. I mean, if I was a teacher, I'd say, all right, guys, put your textbook down for today. What we're going to do is I'm going to play you this YouTube video. No homework assignments. Just think about it and share it with people. And I play that documentary for people and I wouldn't even say anything. I'd be like, all right, guys, that's all I wanted to show you. Let's get that in the education system as an option. Because if you're not showing it, that's also a problem. And that's also a form of manipulation. You have to show everything on the table and then you let people decide for themselves what they think. You don't force it. You say, it's always how I do it. I say, guys, I just want to present this to you. This is an option. Do what you want with it, but it's important and please share.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you to the viewers for joining us today, because without you, we wouldn't even have a show. I'm really looking forward to all your kind comments. Please like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Surrender into endlessness, puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. Heart and soul, I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion, it's okay.